and welcome to episode 13 of Qatsyr Harvest. I'm pleased to be with you. My name is Craig Winn, and this is the YAHOWAH blog. We're discussing the upcoming harvest of God's covenant children, the one that will take place immediately prior to the time of Jacob's troubles. The name of this harvest is Shabuah. It means sevens. And as we might expect, it occurs 7 years prior to Yahweh's return for his people with his beloved son and our Messiah, to David. So let's jump right back into the point where we left off on our last program, because I want you to know everything that can be known about this marvelous opportunity to take the ride of a lifetime from earth to heaven, from 3 dimensions to 7, from the world of men to the very realm of God. So in this next statement, Yahweh tells us that one way to acknowledge his charity is to show a little ourselves. And yet he wants it to be our choice and a voluntary offering. And when we consider about what he has to say in this regard, there isn't much that is expected of us. And yet this is the first even hint that Yahweh is encouraging us to give back. Then you should act upon and engage in. This is from Ashah. You should attend to and celebrate, participating in, at this time, the festival feast, the Chag of Shabuah, to approach Yahweh your God with a mishah, a solvent, an appropriately affordable portion. It's from masas, an ultimately insignificant and essentially worthless, all but invisible substance that is even dissolvable. Voluntarily offering of one's own initiative of your hand, which to demonstrate the way to benefit from the relationship you can actually and consistently give when compared to how in this relationship Yahweh, your God, continues to bless and adore you. Devarim words, Deuteronomy 6:10. As is our custom, we're going to delve into the text and consider every word such that we harvest the full portent from God's instructions and glean every insight that is available to us. For those who would like to see a written presentation of this same material, in each of these programs, this now being our 13th, in a series that will probably be some 50 long by the time we're done, on just the Shabuah harvest, and then an equal number devoted to the Towrah harvest, both of which are presented in this volume. This is volume 5 of the Yada Yahowah series, one of 33 some books on the shelf at YAHOWAH.com, all offered freely online. You can also buy them in a paperback and hardback form from Amazon. But this is Qatsyr Harvest of the Yada Yahowah series. And in it, we will make our way through this book, which I am now sharing with you in a visual and audible format. Quite frankly, because Yahweh asked me to do it this way. After having written, I think, 36 books now in total, God decided that it was time to stop writing for a while and to start speaking, so that, given the opportunity, you could invite me and, through me, him, into your homes. Listen to what God had to say, something that his people haven't done in over 3,400 years since they told him to go away and shut up. And now, through his chosen implement, he is addressing you again and is inviting you to capitalize on everything that he has made available to you, including the text of this message. Then you should act and engage in. Of course, this is Ashah. Ashah is a very common word in the Hebrew text. It can be translated as do, to engage in something, to act upon something. I typically like to translate it as to act upon and engage in, because that is so much more insightful than simply do. And in this case, the thing that we're being asked to attend to is a chog. Now, a chog is a festival feast. A chog is a party. And therefore, Shabuah, from Yahweh's perspective, and he should know since he's the one conveying this message to us, and he's the one that conceived the purpose of Shabuah, it is a festival feast. It is also, as we learned elsewhere, a Qatsyr, which is why I use that term both to introduce this program and for the book devoted to the harvest. So it is an ingathering of God's people, and is a great time of celebration. So then you should act upon and engage in the festival feast of Shabuah to approach Yahweh. La is a preposition in Hebrew. I've rendered it to approach, although that has a verbal connotation. La means to draw near, to move toward. So the rendering certainly appears appropriate. Yahweh is God's one and only name. We will continue to reinforce this throughout every program, because one of the most important parts of my mission with Yahweh and our collaboration together was to reintroduce his people to his name. Long ago, for religious reasons, rabbis and those who preceded them erased Yahweh's name from his own testimony and from the lives of his people. It was the most egregious crime ever committed. It is why God is so opposed to not only all religions, but to Judaism in particular, because it is the one that has most egregiously perpetuated this myth when God's people should have known better. Unless you are willing to acknowledge and embrace and openly state Yahweh's name, unless you acknowledge that Yahweh's name is his one and only name, unless you come to realize that it is easily pronounced and must be pronounced if you're going to engage in a relationship with him, then you're going to remain, as Jews have been for a very long time, estranged from God. The name is very easily pronounced based on two words alone. Yahweh introduced his name to Moshe in the Torah by saying that it was based on the verb haya. Haya means to exist. It is written hey, yod, hey. So it tells us how to pronounce the yah and the ah ending. So yah and then ah are part of the pronunciation of Yahweh's name, and quite frankly beyond dispute. So the only thing that one need to add to that would be to know how to pronounce the wah, which I have rendered as an O sound, because this message was presented within Yahweh's Torah teaching. And the O sound in Torah doesn't just magically appear. It is from the Hebrew wah. That same O sound that you hear in Shalom is also the product of the Hebrew wah. Riddle resolved. So it says, Yahweh your God, Elohim. Elohim also, the O sound is from, at least in its formal and most genitive state, which is as Elohah, Elohim being the plural of Elohah. The O sound is also from the Hebrew wah. It says, approach Yahweh your God with a mishah. And we'll examine that more in a moment. But mishah is properly rendered as an appropriately affordable portion. It is something that is otherwise would be considered insignificant. It is invisible. It is dissolvable. Therefore, it is a solvent. Solvent is a term that most people don't appreciate much. You know what the universe's most fundamental solvent is? The universal solvent in our world? It's water. Water dissolves most everything into it and works as a wonderful solvent, which is why when we wish to cleanse ourselves, when we want to cleanse the food that we eat, we want to remove the impurities so that they attach themselves to the water and wash away. We use water to rinse our food, to rinse our systems, and to clean our bodies. Water is the universal solvent. And it is something that is also spectacular at dissolving things. And when it is clear, it is essentially invisible. And it is so prevalent in our world, you could say that its price would be not only affordable, but insignificant in cost. So we're to offer this solvent, voluntarily offering this on one's own initiative, a nadaba. This is a free will contribution, and it is non-compulsory as a donation, demonstrating one's own inclinations to do so voluntarily and readily out of abundance. Now, it is also interesting that if you consider the molecular weight of our bodies, while different organs have a different percentage, I think the overall percentage of water is above 50% and may in fact be as much as 70% of our weight as people is water. And when you recognize that Shabuah is the process of going from a mortal being here in this corrupt and decaying realm of matter and malfeasance, and being liberated from that and being transformed into a spiritual being, it is the water that would represent the majority of what is being left behind. Now, there is also another insight here, in that when Yahweh speaks of his ruach, he almost always, that be his spirit, he almost always uses in anything associated with it, including the word itself, a mem, symbolizing the source of water. But it is a something that God would have us appreciate as the source of life. You know, we emerged from water, and in this regard, this recognition that we are leaving this planet, going to Shamaim, we're going from a life form born of water to one born of spirit. That is really the purpose of this wonderful transformation through Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, where our souls are scrubbed clean and we transition from being born of water, as we are as animals to our mothers, to being born of spirit to our Heavenly Father. So it is being offered of one's own initiative, of your hand, which to demonstrate the way to the benefits of the relationship, you can actually and consistently give, especially when compared to how this relationship is blessed by Yahweh, your God, who adores you. Yes, Yahweh's not asking very much of us, but since we are offering out of our homes, particularly out of Israelite homes, the bread of life the 2 loaves in this particular case that we're bringing out of our homes, for us to add a little water to it, signifying this transformation from a physical birth to a spiritual birth, and the cleansing that takes place in this process and this transition into new life. Sounds like a pretty wonderful trade-off. We gain eternal life. We gain our adoption into Yahweh's family. We are perfected by Him. We're enriched. We're empowered. We're enlightened. We're emancipated. We're enabled, all to, according to Yahweh, a double portion of a second aspect or application of a tenfold enhancement. So there's a lot going on that He is offering us, such that we actually inherit the entire universe. And He's not asking very much of us. And there may be even another aspect of this if we were to consider the universal solvent being water, something that is transparent and is effective at dissolving things. If we realize that Pesach, matzah, and Bikurim, we have the door to Yahweh's home opened on Pesach by Dode fulfilling Passover as the lamb. We have our souls perfected. Let's just use the metaphor of the husks and the chaff of the grain that represents saved souls is taken away, blown away, if you will, leaving a purified grain that is beginning to grow and mature on Bikurim. That for that Bikurim harvest to manifest itself now into Shabuah, the seeds that are part of that grain need to not only be planted, not only to be cultivated, but they need to be watered. And so God could be saying here, if you want to participate in the Shabuah harvest, participate. Make a contribution. Water the seeds that I have sown so that they grow, and that the crop, this ultimate ingathering on Shabuah, is not parched. It's not seeds thrown upon a desert rock that have no chance of rooting and growing and being productive. But in fact, you're watering them. You're cultivating them. Make a contribution. You're going to be so much happier in eternity with Yahweh, knowing that you did something beyond just getting your own soul in this situation. That there are a number of other souls that are there because you took the time to water some seeds along the way. And Shabuah, marvelous time to do so. So God has said it so many times that I think it bears repeating. We must engage if we want to profit from the mikre. When it comes to the bereth, our actions determine whether we are considered participants. If you look at the first time that the covenant was adroitly modeled, it would be through Noah and the ark, and all of those that were aboard the ark. They were spared from a world of corrupt religious Hamas, actually, Yahweh uses that term, individuals who are very warlike and controlling, vicious, because of one thing. Well, maybe two. To begin, Noah made himself available because he had disassociated from these ruthless terrorists, these political and religious individuals, and was living apart from them. And then he not only listened to what Yahweh said, he did as Yahweh asked. He built the ark and he boarded it. And he did not leave that ark, stop caring for the animals and the life that was on that ark and his own family until the storm had subsided and the waters had withdrawn. So there is another insight here worth considering. Now, as is the case with unyeasted bread, 7 sevens is a chag. It is a celebration of the relationship. It is our opportunity to approach the creator God of the universe, and, well, that's worth throwing a party over. And you notice here, well, we should be elated to be in this position. The one who is throwing the party is Yahweh. He's just asking us to attend. Therefore, while you and I might not think that we're particularly worthy, from God's point of view, our inclusion in his eternal family is a celebration. Well, that's something to think about. You got the creator of the universe, the author of life, telling us that our inclusion in his family by way of Shabuah is something he's going to celebrate. And he wants to celebrate this occasion with us. That is why it's a chag. So in the midst of this transition from God doing everything for us, with our only responsibility being to respond to what he is offering, we see the first hint of us being able to contribute something to the relationship. To be sure, very little is being asked of us, something so mitzvah that it is appropriate, it is affordable, it's perceived to be insignificant in terms of its cost, especially when compared to the greater good. Mitzvah is something that is provides a solvent. It is soluble. It enables things to dissolve into it. And when you consider that all God has poured into this relationship, the point of vanishing and becoming invisible, if you will, on Shabuah really has a nice ring to it. We're told by Yashayah that when this Shabuah harvest occurs, there'll be so few of us that capitalize upon it, and our departure will be so instantaneous that most people will pay it no attention. And yet we will just simply vanish, becoming invisible, dissolving into the greater good of Yahweh's family. Now, as I have shared with you, I think that's a lovely metaphor and visualization. I think that when we consider water as the ultimate solvent, and we parlay that into this realization that we have a natural birth through water and then a spiritual birth into Yahweh's family, where our soul becomes energy-based and like light. When we recognize that water is the source of life, that we recognize that water is the ultimate solvent, and that we're cleansed, both what we eat, our insides and our exterior are cleansed with water because of its solvent nature. All of these things are kind of marvelous insights that we can glean from this text regarding the harvest. Now, all of this, too, could be suggesting that our contributions, when compared with God's Barak blessings, reveal Yahweh's love. We become a window through which Yahweh can be perceived, doing infinitely more for us than we could possibly do for him. I think you know, I've said it so many times, that since Yahweh and I first met 23 years ago, I've devoted most of my waking hours to doing as he has asked. And, it's a lot of hours. I mean, you imagine 23 years and some change of, on average, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's an enormous amount of ashah, of engaging and acting on behalf of the covenant family. And yet in all of that time, I can tell you that while my contribution is sitting behind me in these books, and they were a collaborative effort, and where I'm now trying to pour out from my mind what I have learned over all of this time and sharing it with you, that no matter how much I have invested, no matter how much I have contributed, Yahweh has provided so much more. One of the great rewards is my lovely wife and producer, who just returned from her sojourn across the Great Sea in Florida, and returned, but decided that she needed to take a power nap after coming back home, not sleeping well when we're apart. So she has awakened and has joined me for the first time now in the last 7 or 8 programs. So if you wondered why I had the wry smile, that was my bride walking behind the camera, blowing me a kiss as we were going along. And I bring her up at this time for many reasons, one of which is she is my wife, and I'm glad to have her back. And I am doing this live show with you, and now I'm sitting here in this seat devoted to this program. But to a large degree, she is a gift from God. So, I can recall when, for example, I decided that, the years that I spent writing Prophet of Doom to protect Yahweh's people from Islam was not the most fun thing that I've ever done. Islam is really hellish. And so after 10:7, and I knew that I understood the religion that had tormented God's people better than anyone on earth. But I knew that it was the one book that I had not gone back and edited, where I had rewritten all of these others 5, 10, 15 times, making corrections along the way. But I had never gone back to Prophet of Doom. And I knew that, therefore, there would be hundreds, if not thousands, of things that we have learned since it was written that would now be improperly presented in that book, because you just didn't know those things at that time. And so I said to God, why don't we just keep on doing what we're doing? We don't really need to go back there and do that, do we? Yeah, God's response was, I've taken care of you, evidenced by my beautiful wife and this beautiful home that we share together. Now you take care of my people. So, I was fully aware that my wife was a gift, and it is pertinent to this conversation because the fact that it is obvious, no matter how much we try to contribute to Yahweh's cause, to his people, to his beloved son, he is a bigger contributor than we are. And he's happy with that result. That is something God is thrilled to do. He wants to contribute to his covenant family, and particularly to those who are engaged, enriching and enlarging his covenant family. So he makes an effort to cultivate these harvests through us, especially when we properly credit his beloved son, Dod, for all he has done to make this possible, fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. Now, as is the case with any invitation offered under the auspices of free will, the recipient has the option to accept it, to ignore it, or to reject it. And that is why ashah, engage in and act, was scribed in the consecutive form which conveys volition. There are numerous things we need to ashah, to do, to participate in the covenant and approach Yahweh. But there is no compulsion. No one is forcing us or commanding us to act upon Yahweh's guidance. These are requests, not demands. And that's why I share them with you in this tone. I'm going to give you the opportunity I'm going to show you that don't open the door to Yahweh's home and to eternal life. I'm going to present the fact that he carried the guilt of every covenant member into Sheol to deposit it there, never to be seen again, to perfect you. I'm going to reveal that the firstborn of Yahweh, his Bakor, signed our adoption papers on Bakurim so we could be adopted into Yahweh's covenant family so that he could enrich and empower. Somebody is feeling very good about themselves. Now, he could enhance, enrich, and empower us on Shabuah, and then doubling down and doing so twice more, a 10 times increase on Shabuah. It is all there for us to accept, but you have to act. And that is your choice. And you really can't act until you know what he's offering, until you realize what he is asking in return. So this is the reward for those who accept it. There is a consequence both of accepting and of rejecting the conditions of the covenant, of which there are 5. And the 5 each, actually, the conditions of the covenant are to walk away and to disengage from Babel, the commingling of religion and politics, the confusing words of man, the culture of man, the family of man from our country. We must walk away from these things to be part of the covenant family. That's the prerequisite. We can't even begin to approach God until we disassociate from humankind in this way. The second condition is to walk to God and allow him to perfect us. This is accomplished when we accept the benefits of matzah, where Dod removed our guilt, perfecting us by depositing it in Sheol, never to be seen again. As a result of this, we're in a position to trust and rely on Yahweh, as opposed to man's ways, as opposed to our military, our country, our religion, our political party, or any other such nonsense. Yahweh says, if we're going to be together, I want you to trust me. I want you to rely on me. That's the third condition of the covenant. The fourth is the means to do the first 3. Because Yahweh says, I want you to closely examine and carefully consider these instructive terms and conditions of the covenant. That is the fourth condition, because it is only then that we're in a position to trust and rely. Trust and rely are not like beliefs and faiths. You have to know to trust. You have to understand if you're going to rely. This then leads to the fifth condition of the covenant, which reinforces really the first one. We're to circumcise our sons on the 8th day. And what that means is we are to karat. We're to separate this part of the human anatomy that is essential to the conception of life, so that we recognize that we are separating ourselves from the family of man to be part of the family of God. Now, it's interesting, of course, that some women will say, well, what do we do if men are to be and boys are to be circumcised? Well, of course, it's parents circumcising their children. Look at the wonderful story of Moshe and his wife. It's a story, in fact, I just had to render here for a presentation I'll make one day here soon in terms of Yahweh, how Yahweh wants us to respond to threats from others, to rebellion, to others who claim that they are also speaking for God. So Zipporah was Moshe's wife. He met her in a very noble fashion. She and her 6 other sisters, 7 in total, were being harassed by some bandits who were tormenting them, and Moshe, because he's a man of character, intervened, and he protected these young women and their flock. And showing that Goyim, at this point and for a considerable period thereafter, were more appreciative of what Moshe did and protecting them. The women's fathers, who was also a shepherd, and he was a priestly sort in Midian. So why did you bring this lovely man home? We could break bread together. Of course, when Moshe did this for the children of Israel and Mitzrayim, they mocked him and threatened that they would expose him. A very different attitude, isn't it? And so here you have this wonderful story of character and of the proper response to a courageous act, and Zipporah, whom Moshe ends up marrying. And then you have this other incident where Yahweh says something that is badly translated. It's in most English Bibles that'll say that Yahweh wanted to kill Moshe. No, it's not what it says. What it says is that Yahweh wanted to address a life and death decision regarding Moshe. And that life and death decision happened to be regarding circumcision. Moshe's and Zipporah's son was not circumcised. And Yahweh brought it to Moshe's attention and says, this is a life and death matter. You can't participate in Pesach, Passover, as a male unless he's circumcised. Therefore, there's no opportunity for ongoing life. You need to take care of this. And Zipporah, rather than refusing, she was from a different culture, she circumcised the boy immediately. She supported Yahweh and her husband in this regard. And she may have been a little bit bent out of shape by it, because she flipped the foreskin against Moshe's foot and said, you are now a bridegroom of blood. And to which Yahweh said, yes, he is the son-in-law of a blood covenant. A marvelous statement that explains that if you want to be part of the covenant family, well, one of those conditions is you need to avail yourself of Pesach, and you can't avail yourself of Pesach as a male unless you're circumcised. This is a life and death matter. And it was a marvelous way of presenting that story in a way that we should be able to all appreciate, particularly when the words are translated correctly and understood. So there are these terms and conditions of the covenant. There's 5 of them. I've shared all 5 of them with you. I even went down memory lane to share a lovely insight that is part of this, help you understand a misrepresented passage in the Torah. But there are also 5 benefits. And what we find, and it's reinforced through the example I just shared with you, that all 5 benefits of the covenant are delivered through the first 3, Moed Mikre, which Yahweh's beloved son, who I can assure you was circumcised, Dod, fulfilled. Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. The 5 benefits of the covenant are eternal life, being perfected by God so we can enter his presence, being adopted into his family, and being enriched and empowered by him. Those are the 5 benefits of the covenant, all delivered because Father and Son fulfilled Pesach, offering us this marvelous gift. All God's asking us to do on Shabuah is to offer a couple of loaves of bread out of our homes and a little water to help the seeds grow. So we should never forget that God's purpose isn't actually to save us, but instead to adopt us. And to enable that process, he must make us like himself, immortal and perfect, and a spiritual, energy-based, light-based being, removed from the decaying constraints of this earth and to being a physical being, all of which is being conveyed through this process so that we can enter God's presence enjoy his role as our father, as he was the father to Dode. And then he can raise us as his children, helping us grow. Our goal is to develop a family-oriented relationship, the Bereth covenant. The path to his home is 7 steps. While the first 3 provide the benefits of the covenant, we don't actually go home as covenant members until Shabuah, and that harvest is still upcoming. It is on Shabuah, 7 years prior to the ultimate opportunity to be reunified with Yahweh, to be reconciled in our relationship with Yahweh, particularly Israelites and Yehudim, on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations, which is October 2nd in 2033, 6,000 Yah, leading to Sukkah, where we get to camp out with God for all eternity. A marvelous camping trip through the universe and here on earth with our Heavenly Father. So this is a marvelous presentation of God's love and the relationship he is inspiring on our behalf as he seeks to raise us. As I have shared, Shabuah is a Chag celebration, a festival feast that has been established in our honor by God. Think of that. The Chag, the celebration, this party is in our honor. All we have to do is attend. Isn't that amazing that the creator of the universe, a 7-dimensional being that created this massive 6-dimensional universe of which we reside, that has trillions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars and scores of planets around each of them, is so enamored with wee little us that he celebrates our inclusion into his family. Now, you'd think that everyone would want to enjoy that. And you look at this harvest, Shabuah. Christians counterfeited it. They stole it. They paid no attention to Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim that make it possible. And then rather than being a harvest of Yahweh's covenant family, they make it out to be Pentecost and the birth of their God-forsaken church. What's wrong with people? And the Israelites have no idea that Dode fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim. That Dode is the Messiah and the Son of God. That he is their returning king. That Yahweh said, he is my son, I am his father. That he volunteered to do this for us. The greatest sacrifice of all wasn't Dode volunteering to serve as the Passover lamb or even take our guilt into Sheol. The greatest sacrifice wasn't having to witness it and to write the 22nd Mizmor and the 88th, depicting how the Romans would crucify him and whip the very flesh off his body. And then to witness how he himself would be abandoned for a time in Sheol. Yes, this was a lot to ask of a man. But that wasn't the greatest sacrifice of all. It was that his people, Yisrael and Yehudim, have negated all of it. That rather than celebrating what he did, rather than being thankful for what he did, they were just like they were to Moshe when Moshe offered to intervene to keep the Egyptian taskmaster for beating them to death, and then returned to liberate them, and all they did was spit in his face. And that is exactly what Israel has done. For the last 2,000 years, Dode has been put through the agony that he endured all of this only to be rejected by his own people, who had the gall not only to foist a false Messiah, Bar Kokhba, to replace him, and then to replace all that he represents as the Zeroah, as the Lamb of God, as the Messiah, as the shepherd, as the king. Another goddamn star. It belongs to Bar Kokhba. And then to honor the person who came up with this egregious lie and forever separated Yisrael from this realization that Doe did these things for God's people, for them, by becoming the founder of Rabbinic Judaism, which is vastly more popular among Jews than is the truth about Yahowah and Dowd. He had to endure that. He's still enduring it. My job is to stop that. My job is to look you in the eye and say, what in the hell is wrong with you? How could you do this to your Messiah and King? How could you do this to a man who offered you so much and who told you everything he was going to do and then did it? Why? What is so stubborn about you that even now, as I provide these live streams on X, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Rumble, and even on Odyssey, whatever that might be, and I need to learn that since we're live streaming there, that with all of this, with all of these books that I've written to you, with all of these programs, now over 100 of them, coming into your home and proclaiming this, just a tiny fraction of you have responded. Why? I mean, the truth is no longer hidden. I'm looking you in the eye. I'm telling it to you, person to person. Why do you continue to reject and deny Yahweh's name? Continue to reject and deny Dowd as your Messiah and King, the very Son of God. Why do you reject this gift of life and the perfection and to inclusion into the covenant family that he has offered up to you? Why? Now, I'm going to conclude this program on that note, because really there is nothing else that I can ask you, say to you, encourage you to ponder more important than this. So I thank you for listening. I appreciate your time. I know that everything I have said is overwhelming to you because everyone has lied to you and told you otherwise. But you're at least here. You're listening. Now tell a friend. Absorb what I've shared. And a Shah. Act. This has been the 13th edition of Qatsyr Harvest as part of the YAHOWAH blog. And I am your host, Craig Winn.